Hello, and welcome to the Toledo Museum of Art's Black History Month celebration in celebration of the Black family in 2021. My name is Colin Stegman, and I am the programs coordinator here at the Toledo Museum of Art. Before we get started, I have several thanks to give for making this year's virtual celebration a possibility. First, I would like to thank artist Yusuf Lateef and singer and teacher Margaret Barron for their assistance in organizing this year's event. I also would like to thank the many others who are featured throughout the video. Photographer James Dickerson for providing the beautiful black and white photography you will see throughout the presentation. Artist and quilter Alice Grace and Associate Curator of American Art at the Toledo Museum of Art, Lauren Applebaum, for their interview at the Collingwood Arts Center. Toledo Opera resident artist Emily Moran for her piano playing with Margaret Barron that you will hear in the background of Dr. Perryman's address. Poet Ophelia Thompson and Justin Longacre from the Toledo School for the Arts and the TSA Creative Writing Team. The City of Toledo Human Relations Commission. And last but not least, I would like to thank Reverend Dr. Donald L. Perryman, Senior Pastor of Center of Hope Community Baptist Church, for providing the keynote speech you will hear at the beginning of the celebration. Without further ado, please give a big virtual welcome to Reverend Dr. Donald L. Perryman.
To the senior management team of the iconic Toledo Museum of Art, an institution whose prominence and impact illuminates on the entire global art landscape. To the board of officers, to the directors, to the museum director, Mr. Adam Levine, the indefatigable Margaret Barron, and the distinguished young creative talent Yusuf Lateef. Thank you for the amazing privilege to be a part of this year's annual Black History Month celebration. I am deeply grateful to be able to serve on this prestigious program with so many talented individual people who make up this accomplished creative community. With that being said, I wanted to share a couple of thoughts, most of which, of course, down through the years I have been sharing in my pulpit at Center of Hope Church, my column in the Sojourner's Truth newspaper, or in my lifelong educational pursuit. But also when talking about this year's Black History Month theme, the Black family, representation, identity, and diversity, for me, lived experience may figure most prominently in my thinking. As activist and co-founder of Campaign Zero, Brittany Packnett Cunningham once said, "It is the people most oppressed by society that have the most intimate knowledge of it, because our survival is dependent upon it." In other words, we are a product of our lived experience and our environment. Think about that. We are each a product of our lived experience and our environment, and yet we have the ability, through the diversity of our individual God-given gifts, to touch and change a world, a nation, or a community. I say that to say that Black History Month has become a tradition in this country. I think it's safe to say that we've even fallen somewhat into a routine. You'll usually hear about George Washington Carver, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, or Shirley Chisholm. You get the idea. Let there be no doubt that these are heroes. These are our heroes who lived historic lives, and as a black man, I am proud of them. This year, you'll also probably hear about that superb statesman and good troublemaker, John Lewis. You'll hear about Kamala Harris, other celebrated pioneers in government, industry, business and finance, and certainly entertainment. Let there be no doubt. History is being made even as we speak, and we should celebrate these accomplishments. But even as we think about these great men and women and their magnificent achievements, I'm haunted by a kind of emptiness. Something about the story is not whole. Here's what it is. I am happy for the success they have had, but I will be ecstatic when my brothers and my sisters collectively experience success. I am delighted when I make it, but I rendezvous in seventh heaven, so to speak, when we as a people make it. I am joyful, pleased as punch when I rise a little higher. But it shouts me, I marvel, I am frenzied when we together rise higher. And so there are two things that I want to say to help us comprehend that idea and thus be able to look at Black history in a different light. And then I'll take my seat. Let me begin with a man who made history earlier this year, Eugene Goodman. He grew up in southeast, Washington, D.C., and served in the United States Army as an infantry soldier in Iraq. And when he left the military, he joined the Capitol Hill Police Force, and he was on duty on January 6th when insurrectionists stormed our Capitol. He was standing in the hallway leading to the Senate chamber as the mob surged toward him carrying weapons and zip ties. And he was alone. He is a member of a community of people who, to quote a phrase from Princeton professor Carey Day, he is of a people who, quote, have always been on the margins of how this nation interprets the contributions to the construction of this democracy, unquote. And he was alone, solitary and companionless. And what Eugene Goodman did next was to make history. He tactically retreated, yes, he tactically retreated up a stairwell where he led 85 violent insurrectionists away from the Senate chamber, away from the then vice president, and away from the senators the mob was targeting. The entire incident took only 85 seconds. Sometimes moments move mountains. In that short but critical period of time, the senators escaped the chamber so that when the doors were breached, there was nothing there but chairs and desks. I need for us to be sure that we understand the significance of what Eugene Goodman did that day. He put others ahead of himself. He risked his own safety to protect the members of the United States Senate. More than that, he risked his own safety to protect a cherished symbol of democratic rule that belongs to all of us. Do not minimize it. Every American who believes that people should rule themselves was in that chamber, and Eugene Goodman was leading danger towards himself and away from us. But we can also think about his actions like this. One person alone realizes that there is a higher calling than just the individual. There is a person who understands that the individual exists only because the community is safe and thriving. It doesn't have to be in an acute emergent crisis like this. There could be a Eugene Goodman protecting the community from our many chronic social ills, hunger, bigotry, disease, homelessness, mental illness, addiction, and every one of us can be Eugene Goodman. What is Black history? Black history is a call to remember who we truly are in a crisis. Eugene Goodman made history on January 6th when the existence of our democracy was at stake. But I wonder, will the school history books continue to keep our students in the dark by removing the controversial issues or omitting Goodman's heroism because it, like the 1619 Project, exposes the nation's seamy side and the unjust ways in which we wield power. Now let us turn our focus to Black history in a way that we usually do not, beginning in pre-colonial Africa, where we discover an idea which is the beating heart of the true Black experience, and something that explains where we are today and how we can become the people we need to be. Scholar Peter Paris argued that when the Africans that arrived on these shores as a result of their forced migration, they did not arrive as a tabula rasa or blank slate. Rather, he posited that Africans brought along moral virtues and aesthetic values which were preserved despite an oppressive American existence. these group commonalities or core values influenced by our African heritage are many. You could spend a lifetime just talking about them, but let me just mention two today. The first is self-determination, or the importance of narrating our own narrative as a corrective to the racist narrative that black people have been at the margin of how we think about our contributions to this country. And the second core value is our commonality or interdependency, which is the realization that we are all together in the same boat. I'm talking about this because we brought these quote-unquote gifts to these shores in 1619, but we are in danger of losing them at a critical time where white nationalism has resurged, and there is, according to scholar Alan Cologne, quote, no consistent, comprehensive, coordinated commitment to formally and appropriately educate and socialize the masses of African Americans in a way that provides group liberation in a social climate that emphasizes individual success as a prime value and that is antagonistic to a group liberation and value system. There's no consistent, comprehensive, coordinated commitment to socialize and educate on an intergenerational basis our people in a way that provides group liberation when there exists a social climate that promotes individual success and is antagonistic to group liberation. And what I am suggesting is that the solution can only be reached by centering black Americans and black families in all of our diversity at the center of the United States national narrative. Of course, that's not new. Karenga and Molefi Asante believed that before Nicole Hannah-Jones and the 1619 Project got a hold of it. All of those are names everyone in the community should be familiar with. Yet in our world of alternative facts and a consistently loose relationship with the truth that continues to push out flawed, racialized cultural representations in the media and textbooks that portray white success but failure for black family life. Ever since the controversial 1965 Monahan Report, called The Negro Family, the Case for National Action, which questionably assigned causality of black disadvantage to the rise in black single-parent families, and then proceeded to portray black family life as dysfunctional, pathological, and problematic. These misguided distortions are a result of the tendency to analyze and interpret from a Eurocentric or white middle-class norm rather than through the lenses provided by African Americans' unique circumstances and experiences. However, when we view them in a larger context, black family patterns and outcomes present a more accurate strengths-based reality rather than the traditional deficit perspective. Certainly, scholar R.B. Hill identifies strengths and attributes the direct influences of the African cultural heritage on contemporary black life. He defines these strengths as the cultural assets that are transmitted through socialization from generation to generation and are not merely adaptations or coping responses to contemporary racial or economic oppression. What are these strengths? Or as I call them, gifts? Black families tend to be collectivist and communal rather than individual. Black families tend to be child-centered, placing a special value on children because they represent the continuity of life. Black families are strong achievement-oriented despite low teacher expectations, which has played a major role in the decline in academic motivation of black youth. Black families are resilient. Black families are oriented to a strong work ethic despite the discouragement resulting from systematic exclusion from the official labor force. Can't find a job? We'll make a job. Black families have multiple family structures in addition to the nuclear family model. Black families are flexible in family roles, with mothers often performing many traditional roles of fathers and fathers assuming customary female roles, and children performing many parental functions for younger siblings. These are strengths. Black families are equipped with strong kinship bonds and extended family, cousins to the fourth and fifth degree that we claim, non-biological play brothers and sisters and other family, which reflects a high value placed on children, the existence of strong protective mothers, and an emphasis on discipline and respect for elders. These are strengths of the black family and do not traffic in dysfunctions and deficits. So the question becomes, how do we change the narrative while socializing and educating our children for group advancement in a multicultural world and in a black community that is diverse but has these gifts or commonalities? Or how do we socialize and educate our children for group advancement that in a world that devalues and dehumanizes them and makes them to feel as if they don't belong? What are you doing with the children? And the answer is that we have to do more than what the schools are able to provide. Children need more than the rote memorization of facts in our approach to history. We need to do more than pour information into children. We also need to draw out of them the gifts and creativity that every child is born with. Every black family, and I would hazard to say every family period, needs to be connected to some larger network where culturally responsive teaching and learning takes place, and where gifts are nurtured and promoted rather than the child being told to sit down and be quiet all the time. I don't know how many times I have counseled adults only to discover that somewhere in growing up they were talked out of their gifts, that they were devalued so much that the flame just died out. We need to find a church or a program that espouses these African core values, these commonalities that will allow our children to escape the danger of becoming spiritual and relational refugees and gradually shape a new consciousness for the purpose of the preservation and promotion of community. Which leads me to the last idea. Interdependency, or what the Africans call ubuntu. That is the African in us. It is the black in black America. Ubuntu. It literally means I am because we are. Or, in other words, ain't no me without a we. Ubuntu, one word, but it contains a universe. This is how Bishop Desmond Tutu put it. We believe that a person is a person through other persons. That my humanity is caught up, bound up inextricably with yours. When I dehumanize you, I dehumanize myself. The solitary human being is a contradiction in terms. Therefore, you seek to work for the common good because your humanity comes into its own in community and belonging. Yet our society is grounded in another tradition. We celebrate the individual. I would ask you to look around and see these troubled times. You only have to think about the last 30 days to see the records that celebrating the individual has wrought. But whether you think about 30 days, 30 years, or 300 years, you see exactly what you would expect when you ground your society in a contradiction, and nothing will change until we find another way. Would there even be an America without black people? That's what W.E.B. Du Bois asked, as he detailed the many individual black achievements that form the heart of the idea and construction of America that he wrote about in his 1924 groundbreaking book called The Gift of Black Folks. And certainly, without black achievement, this country would not be what it is. But what could come of a world where Ubuntu ruled? Where someone else being hungry meant you were hungry? Would people be hungry in that world? If someone else being poor meant you were poor, would people be poor in that world? Would there be wars in that world? Would there be foreign or domestic terrorism in that world? Would our public discourse be so toxic? Would people steal from their neighbors? Would those who have so much be so callous as to deny aid to those who have so little? Would churches burn? Would people storm the Capitol? Would that world be a place of equality, of equal opportunity, of quality education for all? A world where each of us was Eugene Goodman in our own way. Would that be a troubled world or a world of peace? My friends, my people, Ubuntu may sound like a fantasy, but it is not a dream. It is history. Black history. For Black History Month. A world like that existed once, and it can exist again.
I'm Lauren Applebaum, the Associate Curator of American Art at the Toledo Museum of Art, and we are here today with Alice Grace, the artist, quilt maker, painter extraordinaire in her studio at the Collingwood Arts Center. I just want to thank you, Alice, for having us into your studio today to see your amazing quilted work, and I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself too.
I'm Alice Grace. As I said, I'm an artist. I deal in all fields of art. I like my visual art, my quilts. I do a little glass making. And I have been doing this since I was a little girl. And art has always interested me. And here I am. Continue to do it, and I just can't get up. One fellow asked me, do you ever quit? No, I get up with a brush in my hand, or my hands on a sewing machine. I just love art, and so many things come out in my quilts, brings out life experience.
Well, we're here today, and we're surrounded by a lot of your quilts, and I just want to start off by asking you how you got into quilt making. Was it a family tradition, a community tradition, and how long have you been doing it?
It's, I should say, a family tradition. It started out with my grandmother. My grandmother made quilts, and the quilts she made was so heavy one had to get up before the other in order to get it off of you. It was that heavy. And just getting older, I started looking at how so many things that she's taught and talked about her quilts that was somewhat, I never heard anybody speak of it. So I would always say, Granny, where did this piece of material come from? Oh, that's such and such a person gave me that piece of material, was from their dress or from the pants. And that's how she made her quilts. And she had quite a few quilts that was made. We used to laugh at her about her quilts. And I decided the first quilt I made is that one. It's,
This one?
yes,
Oh, wow.
that is Dancing with Granny. So I put my grandmother and myself there, and just little things that I thought were very interesting.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that actually leads into my next question, which is about materials. I know different quilt makers use different kinds of materials for different reasons, and I'm wondering, maybe in this one you could tell me, or really in all of them, like if there are any significance to the types of materials.
No, there's no special piece of material. I think from myself, I put myself in the quilts, my thought and my ideas. So I don't know if it was a traditional style, but I do what I feel, and I bring out my feelings in my quilts, a piece of material I may see, and it looks good to me, and I go along with it. I put it in.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing. I know that, different kinds of quilts are used in different ways. A lot of times people associate African American quilt making, especially with abstraction, but I see that your quilts are actually predominantly figurative and narrative. So I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit more of, the types of storytelling that you do with your work.
that was my first quilt there with Dancing with Granny. From that quilt came this quilt. Now this quilt started out as, I should say, just ideas and thoughts, what went on when I was little. And I started out with this particular corner here. I started out from things that I was told, how picking cotton. So I did that panel. And from that panel, this one came with an idea. So more or less, I would do one panel, put it in the floor. This may stay there for a week, and it gave me an idea of what should come next. And this one here is the village. I should say in Louisiana they call it the quarters.
Okay.
And once, my voice get a little shaky. And one part I think it was 6 houses in a row. So I took the houses and scattered them around. This here is the one-room schoolhouse, and that was from 1st to 6th grade that was in this schoolhouse. And these are the houses around that I added to it. And you'll notice I like a lot of colors because it makes me happy. And I think, just being a little happy about things. And this one here is laundry. They were putting laundry on, hanging their laundry up, and with the sunshine, that's what's the fabric softener and the air freshener.
Okay.
This particular piece here, this old lady, let's say it wasn't about a lot of phone. You didn't have a phone.
Okay.
So this old lady, she would travel from one parish to another. Whenever she came through, she had something to tell you about what went on.
Okay.
So she was the person that to go to.
Yeah.
She would come into the quarters and go to one porch and sit. And everybody came and sit down and listen to what she had to say about who's sick, who passed away.
Oh, wow.
So that is Miss Jane.
So she's like the news broadcaster.
Yes, yes. And we look forward to seeing Miss Jane. When you look up and see Miss Jane crossing the field, it was delightful. Everybody in the neighborhood knew that Miss Jane was coming.
Oh, that's amazing.
And this here is just with the ladies meeting in the quarters, just exchanging ideas, thoughts, and talking.
Mm-hmm.
This piece here, it takes a village. That gentleman there, he was much older than most of them, but he was in charge when everybody left the village. And you had to listen to what he said. And if not, by the time parents got home, you were in trouble because he gave the report. So that was Mr. Battle. I never forget that. Those certain things I don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I put him as such a focal point in my art, because he was. And he made a big difference in all of our lives. This here is just, we would get out and beat tin cans and make music. So I put that piece in. This is the church, which was the focal point of all, all week long. This is where everybody gathered at the church. This one here, my dad, he would come home in the evening, tell us a story. And we would sit, he had a chair. I built a chair, just like the one he sat in, to sit and tell stories. And that's us sitting around him, he telling the story. And from that, I learned a great lesson, because we each had to bring something to that little, circle.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would pick pecans and bring it to the circle. I myself was the youngest one. I'd bring the pecans, but all my pecans was rotten.
Oh.
And Daddy would ask for one, I wouldn't give him one. So when each one of mine I opened, it was no good.
Uh-huh.
So I asked my brother for it. My daddy wouldn't let it do. Nope, you didn't give us any. That's it. And that was a lesson that I learned to share.
Okay. What do you want viewers to take away from your quilts?
I want, let me say this.
Mm-hmm.
The last showing I did was at Martin Luther King Boys Schools.
Mm-hmm.
I take my quilts and I talk about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to get a sense of everything was not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was somewhat of struggle and togetherness.
Mm-hmm.
That's my main thing, is together.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who you are, how it was, you always had that cohesiveness in our family.
Mm-hmm.
But now everybody's all over the world, scattered about. But I try to make people feel that what way I came up and from where I came from and where they are now, it's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And different thoughts, ideals. So I wanted them to take away that there's beauty.
That's really beautiful. I love how, that sense of community that comes across in your quilts, and, the sense of community that comes across through the practice of quilt making too. I know
Mm-hmm.
that quilts it's a practice that a lot of people kind of congregate around. I guess, you've kind of described that stories from your childhood in Louisiana inspire your work. Is there anything else that inspires your work?
Well, just life itself inspired me to do a lot, because I can sit and just watch people moving about, doing things, and it brings ideas to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I have a quote over there
Mm-hmm.
with one of them that, it's sort of, how should I say? Oh, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, my quotes is just bring out the feeling in me, and I have these, in which I'm saving it from my kids,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, that they pass it on,
Mm-hmm.
and they can see a lot of what happened, what went on, how things was.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I like the idea of, passing it along. I think that's what is so significant about quilts, are that they become these family heirlooms that you can pass on.
Yeah, so just say, in some of the quilts that was just, lines, squares.
Mhm.
It didn't give me what I wanted and what I wanted to see, be able to see.
Mhm.
And if I can see it
Mhm.
and have a connection with it, it made a difference. So that quilt became much more important.
Mhm.
I've looked at a lot of quilts in just lines,
Mhm.
squares, cylinders, but it didn't have that love.
Yeah. Oh, that's really beautiful. Yeah. Well, how long have you been in Toledo, and how has the community in Toledo inspired your work?
You know, being here in Toledo, it's pretty much like being in Louisiana. You know, the feeling that everybody seems to be a little bit friendly. I can tell when you're in the say, being friendly and eager to help.
Mhm.
And when I first came here to Toledo, I was a little apprehensive because I only have a cousin here, and I didn't know anybody. But just moving about, I made contact with some people, and I started going to a ceramic class. So that's how I started getting in touch with some arts and the artists. And I did an art show at the Kent Library. I did cookie jars, which I have one over there
Oh.
at the bottom of the shelf.
Yeah.
And I became known as the cookie jar lady.
Okay.
I'm still on the internet, cookie jar lady. And this is what, you know, I always felt that, you know, each piece gave me a stepping stone.
Mhm.
And being here in Toledo, when I did the show at Kent Library, was a gentleman here. He lived here. And he said, you know, you need to go over to the Collingwood.
Mhm.
So I came to the Collingwood, and boom.
Wow.
So everything opened up for me, and I like I like it here because this is my little getaway.
Mhm.
It allows me to socialize
Mhm.
and get ideas from other artists.
Mhm.
So Toledo has its good points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So, Alice, can you tell me if there are any other artists in the community here that you've connected with?
There's one artist, he passed away, Will Clay. I took classes from him, and basically the Collingwood was, how should I say, there's 6 or some artists that lived here, and I was on the first floor, and we got the chance after work. I would come in and we'd get together, and we'd bounce ideas off if you had a thought or show you something different. So this is to say, it's offered a lot
Yeah.
to me. Yeah, and that's why I was here for 7 years, took a 5-year, and I'm back.
Okay.
But I just like this is where I hang out.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I mean, it seems like a really special place.
It is.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Alice, for inviting us into your studio today. It's been really special to hear from you about your work and your practice.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come out and see me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Poetic patchwork, a tribal quilt of poems from over here and from over there. A poetic patchwork that spreads the globe and covers everywhere. A representation of the Black family in all of its diversity, includes all cultures around the world within its identity. This year, we get to hear a patchwork of poetry from students who submitted poems related to their family tree. Each poem speaks for itself. They are numbered 1 to 11, sewn together in meaning and love, weaving a quilt from earth to heaven.
Oil and sweat mixed in the promised land, his face becomes stained with car grease. Little is brought from the mountains of Italy, a memory of chicken farming and cannolis. The wells of money ran dry, so does our traditions. My mother escaped to college for a more American life. Thoroughly modern, I live my life without heritage, though sometimes I catch a whiff of Italy in strange places. Wind over the summer lake or Thanksgiving Day dessert make me wonder how much remains with me.
He liked his life like he liked his boats, clean and in order. Years passed with the birth of the next generation, calloused hands made from stitching mainsails downsized. Perfect little replicas made of things from scrap bins. Never one to waste, every little piece was used. But he loved company, even leaving the creations for another day. Never finishing the DN 743. It rained really hard that day. Lake Erie mourning her best sailor.
My grandma, a friend to the Hispanic community. When she moved from the large city skylines and homemade Italian dinners, 4-day spaghetti sauces that no longer looked red, but a savory brown, she didn't expect to find love. To find love in a small city near the lake, and the Michigan border, where she stayed in a red-brown brick house, rolling her R's or getting bags of fresh tortillas at Tex-Mex. Didn't expect to love the smell of large greasy kitchen pots, cinnamon hot chocolate, Las Posadas at St. Peter and Paul. Days spent teaching migrant workers how to speak English were tiring, but so was watching the neighbor boy who had returned home from Vietnam.
Great-Grandma Esther left with me a small wooden duck with black dotted eyes. In 1929, she left Germany and started her own small family in the U.S. In 2012, she left the world, and my great-aunt inherited her Nebraska farm. I've since lost the duck, long before my great-grandma, and the farm was sold, since no one wants to live in Nebraska.
Early mornings, my abuela ties the apron around my back, my fingers covered in manteca, scooping it down into the dough, watching her transcribe her illiterate mother's broken Spanish, stacking it into freezers, reserving it for bank holidays or just in case. Her little instructions whispered into the back of my mind, reciting it to myself as a prayer before I go to rest each night. My abuela ties the apron around my back, worn by generations of women before me to make tamales.
Blessing recipe. Stuffed bell peppers. A family who cares for the young and elderly is a family that doesn't miss a beat, no matter the speed. Cream chicken over biscuits. The family who tries to stand up even though others fall over is a family that were given biscuits, unleavened bread, and wine. A family who prays together is a family that hungers and thirsts for help for all people. Cheesecake, the family who gathers together to share memories, no matter the layers, is a family that wants their traditions and stories shared. We are surrounded by the seen and unseen who love and fight for us no matter the recipe.
The Windy City. I never saw the inside of the house I came home to. The Michigan natives I was born to took me away from Brookfield before I had the chance to turn two, so brick walls and alleyways are all that remain in my mind. My grandma's now gone, and with her goes the knowledge of her parents' immigration. I've looked up the meaning of Morano, finding only vague word roots and clues, which leave me with more questions than answers about my blood or the many places I've called home.
I am related to a pirate, except I'm not related to a pirate quite exactly, but instead the pirate's brother. In my mind and in my dreams, he still wears the hat, rides not a ship but a dragon, through the stars above Wales and across the seas. Until I can join history with a dragon and hat of my own, I will just say goodnight to dearest brother and goodnight dragon. Nostra Drag. Nostra Drag. Good night, dragon. First and kind of only thing I know in Welsh.
Aunt Jo still hangs around. Dad was her favorite, so she stays by his side. When she was alive, she hated staying here because the refinery made our backyard smell. She lives on in my sister, Olivia Josephine. Her footsteps creak the floorboards late at night. So close, but unable to share the memories of our family that she left with Dolores, in the field, in the car, in the trunk, to the mob that ran her city at night.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brought me across the desert, me and not just my ancestors, and guided me next to my father, his sister's wife, my grandma, and an old record player that cuts into the woolen carpet, which is hiding the last piece of Lego to complete the Death Star.
The farm burnt down before my dad was born. All that is left is barren land. A reminder of the land we left. Traditions have faded, except for one. It comes from a small market in the middle of town, bought 2 to 3 days before Christmas dinner. First boiled in beer, then baked in the oven, with dark brown skin and a warm pink middle. The pot of kielbasa my dad does not want to share, and the leftover container he guards more than our family secrets.
This quilt of poems, now complete, a tapestry of rhythmic words and rhyme, weaved together here in space-time, part of a legacy of the family we all see, that life is not some fantasy hidden within reality, and it is no mystery that is part of the human family, with skin colored black, white, red, yellow, or brown, together are bound in a frenzy of smiles and frowns. Everyday challenges we must face. Together we are the human race. Diverse even within the family, often struggling with identity. Each poem that was presented here reflects and represents a family so dear. Poetry pours forth from the heart and soul, and the stories of these families have been told. As we celebrate this year, Black history, struggling with issues around the family, yearning with desire just to be free, trying to be all that we are meant to be. So many things stand before us every single day. We must accept that they are not going away. Together we stand, divided we fall. Hear the call, let us stand tall. Reach out beyond yourself. Bring something to someone else. We are all in this together. Rough storms we've got to weather, with family as a starting place. We were born to run this race. Life is a gift within the cosmos as we celebrate family from coast to coast.
Stop everything that you are doing and give us 60 seconds of your time. 60 seconds to take a self-inventory. Toledo, how are you doing? If I'm honest with myself, I'm not doing so well. I feel like daily there's some new act of violence, example of hatred, or unjust act being amplified on the news and in my social media feed. I find myself bracing, waiting to see what emotions this new event triggers. Will I be enraged? Will I feel terror? Will it trigger a panic attack? Will I be the one wailing? If I am honest, lately I've just been numb. Take a moment and be honest with yourself. What do you feel? Take a moment and think about all the violence, COVID, disruption to our lives, everything that has occurred in our city since the start of 2020. Toledo, take a breath.